house tonight, so thank you all for coming out in the cold weather. Let's go with our guest from Sacramento to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. And we now move on to nothing to report out of closed session, correct?
You did have a readout.
That's right, I do have a readout. Which I promptly lost. There we go. The Board of Education in closed session voted unanimously to approve the following administrative appointment effective February 1, 2018. Mark Milton is Director of Nutritional Services. Mark's not here with us tonight because he just found out this morning. I consider that an acceptable answer. Mark has served in several food services management positions since 1998, including Duke's Huntington Beach, La Quinta Cliff House, and TS Restaurants, Tres Hombres Long Bar and Grill, and Ruth Chris Steakhouse. In June 2013, he was hired as Director of Food Services for the Lawndale Elementary School District. He was the lead administrator of child nutrition and wellness programs in a school district of 6,000 students at 6 elementary schools and 2 middle schools. His vast experience in food services will help him enhance, improve, and streamline the operations of our Nutritional Services Department. Mark received his Bachelor of Science degree in Hotel and Restaurant Management at California Polytechnic University, Pomona, in the year 2000. We'd like to welcome Mark to our district, and he will be back in February to attend the meeting. So, anybody want to see him speak, he'll come back then. Moving on to staff presentation. Update of State of California 2017-2018, 2018-2019 budget from School Services of California.
Michelle K. Underwood, School Services of California. Michelle back again this year.
Thank you, and thank you, President Wormers, for the honor of leading the pledge this evening. I will briefly give you an overview of the Governor's 2018-19 state budget proposal. He put out this proposal, which is his last, on January 10th, so very fresh information. There will still be some details to be worked out from the Governor's proposal, but I'm here to give you the best information that's possible as of this evening. So let's get started. Some of the themes that we saw from the Governor's proposal, the administration is expecting a slowdown in growth in California, as well as trying to anticipate some of the changes in federal policies that are going to be putting pressures on California. A big priority of the Governor has been the local control funding formula, and he made a point of fully funding the LCFF this year in his last year as Governor. We also see the LCAP process continuing to ramp up and accountability being a focus in Sacramento as well. Big changes are afoot in terms of politics up in Sacramento. As I mentioned, this is the Governor's last state budget. He will be leaving office at the end of this year, and so that really creates a power vacuum from the Governor, because he has had such great political capital in Sacramento, and really for education, one major focus of the LCFF. So lots of dynamics will be changing over the next several months and into the new year. And then we also see that local agencies are continuing to feel the pressure of local control and local decision making while not having as many resources as they would hope. Just briefly on the California economy, again, the administration sees a slowdown in the California economy with a combination of a tight labor market and constrained housing markets that's really starting to slow things down, and you'll see that reflected in some of the administration's forecasts for this budget year and the next. You'll hear me say it time and again during this presentation, the governor did not factor in the recent federal tax changes. It just happened too soon from when they would be putting together the governor's budget and when that tax change happened at the federal level. So that's really going to be a question mark as we go through the next month, how that will affect personal income tax especially. And then also, we have now adult use marijuana in California, which produces revenues for the state. So depending on what happens in terms of federal enforcement, that could change the dynamic here in California. So our biggest three sources of revenue in California are personal income tax, sales and use tax, and corporate tax. And you'll see here the Legislative Analyst's Office back in November put out two scenarios, what a growth scenario would look like, that's your first bar, what a potential recession scenario would look like, that's your gold bar, and then the third bar is what the governor has put out in terms of his state budget. And the key takeaway here, while the Legislative Analyst is not forecasting a recession, they did model it out. And you'll see that is a significant difference in terms of those revenues in 1920 under a growth scenario versus a recession scenario. One of the other big priorities of the governor, in addition to the LCFF, has been his rainy day fund. He is also fully funding the rainy day fund in 1819, and even with a fully funded rainy day fund, the difference between the growth scenario and the recession scenario under the LAO would not be covered under that rainy day fund. And that would just be one-time funds as opposed to likely a structural problem under a recession. So again, we're not, the LAO is not forecasting recession, but is putting it out there for people to be aware of since we are so long into the current recovery. Personal income taxes is a significant portion of the revenues that come into the state of California, and you can see the Legislative Analyst's Office, the UCLA Anderson School of Business, and the January Governor's Administration's forecast, very similar in 2017, in 2018, and 2019, you really see the divergence and the governor being conservative in terms of personal income in 2019. You'll see that significantly lower than the other two forecasts, again reflecting his conservative nature. So we always look at what are the risks both to our economy and the revenue, as well as to the state budget in general, and really most of the risks are what's going to happen in terms of effects of federal changes to California. We see that the Federal Reserve is contemplating an increase in interest rates as we continue to move out of the Great Recession, and that would likely have an effect of slowing spending and borrowing. Also, California has significant relationships through NAFTA, and we could also potentially see a reduction in exports depending on how that relationship with NAFTA changes, if it changes. And then again, not knowing yet the full effect of the federal tax bill here in California. Now, what we did see in terms of the effect of the federal tax policy was right at the end of December and the beginning of January, a significant increase in personal income taxes. And that likely reflected people who have the ability to either take a gain in 2017 or 2018, trying to figure out which was going to be best for them. And so we saw some increase, but the question is that merely a timing issue? Would those revenues have come anyway later in the year? Or is this actually an increase? And if it is an increase over what we would otherwise have expected, is it a one-time increase or is it an ongoing increase? These are things that the administration, the Legislative Analyst's Office, will be analyzing over the next couple of months as they think through the next step in the legislative process, the budget process at the May revision. Again, we have significant trade relationships with Mexico and Canada, and 4.4 million jobs here in California that are associated with our relationship and NAFTA. And again, in terms of revenues from adult use marijuana, between this year and next year, the administration is expecting about $800 million of excise tax from sales. Of course, those are revenue estimates based on current law, and the question is what would happen if the federal government cracked down on adult use marijuana in California. So zooming into Proposition 98, we see Prop 98 at a all-time high of $78.3 billion, both an increase in what was expected in 2018-19, as well as recognizing additional revenues in the current year of $700 million. So combining those two, or I should say the increase from current budgeted level to what the governor has proposed is a $4.6 billion increase for K-14. So not just K-12, but also community colleges. And again, here you see graphically how Proposition 98 has really significantly recovered since that low point in 2011-12. So just sort of a high overview of our major K-12 proposals. As you see, number one, and the largest dollar amount, is fully funding the local control funding formula, costing just under $3 billion to fully implement the LCFF. As we've seen in past years, his second priority has been to put out discretionary one-time dollars for all districts. We also see a proposal around strong workforce program, career technical education, as well as a continued investment in childcare and state preschool, as well as some specific funds for teacher workforce development for special education teachers. We see money proposed for county offices of education to help with districts that are in need of differentiated assistance. So the county office is helping districts who need some help. Also see money for SELPAs, or special education local plan areas, to improve student outcomes. When you look at the California dashboard, about 2/3 of districts are in need of differentiated assistance because of their students with disability outcomes. So that's why we see a focus this year. Additional money for the California Collaboration for Educational Excellence and Proposition 51 Facilities Bond Authority, $640 million provided, a drop in the bucket compared to the $9 billion that was approved by voters. So we just talked through the high points of what is in the education budget. Now let's talk about what's not in the education budget. The most significant increases in costs for districts has not been incorporated into the LCFF. We have not seen an increase in the LCFF base grants. We continue to see increasing retirement costs for both retirement systems, increasing pressure for home to school transportation programs and continuing those even though no new funds have been provided. Also no additional funds for special education above and beyond a cost of living adjustment. So those are, while it's positive that the governor is implementing the LCFF, there are significant things that districts are dealing with cost-wise that are not accounted for. So in terms of the LCFF, the governor has proposed to fully fund the LCFF 2 years ahead of what he had imagined for LCFF. So that cost just under $3 billion, and he highlighted that it has been $17 billion infusion into statewide in terms of the local control funding formula since it was created in 2013-14. So the LCFF receives a cost of living adjustment. That 2.51% is incorporated into the LCFF and is an attempt to keep up with the cost of living and cost of doing business. Of course, results will vary, we know, for the LCFF, depending on the population of a district in terms of their unduplicated pupil percentage. So we have an average there statewide, but more importantly for Torrance, we estimate that the increase would be $416 per ADA, or a growth of about 4.9%. Again, after we have fully implemented the LCFF, if that happens in this year, then the LCFF law calls only for cost of living adjustments. There's not another target that we're moving towards. It's pretty much treading water in terms of a cost of living adjustment for the LCFF after full implementation. This is a graphical representation of what per ADA amounts look like depending on the unduplicated pupil percentage, ranging from an average of $8,300 for districts with the smallest populations up to $10,000, nearly $11,000. So it really is quite a wide spread depending on the population of a district, what full implementation looks like for schools. Again, we see the governor proposing one-time dollars, one-time discretionary dollars for local boards to determine the best use of those one-time funds. That's about $300 per ADA. For Torrance, that equates to about $6.8 million. These are funds that the board and the district get to decide how to use on a one-time basis. This also is paying down the wall of debt in terms of school mandates. The administration has chosen to put out these discretionary dollars and count it against that wall of debt portion. I mentioned special education did not receive any significant increases. Special education receives a cost of living adjustment, again, 2.51%, which equates to just over $13 per ADA. There are some specific funds for workforce development for special education teachers, which we'll talk about in a second, as well as some one-time funds to try and create programs for low-income children ages 0 to 5 who have disabilities. So we see, again, I think reflecting that need for assistance in terms of students with disabilities, we see reflected here, except for no equalization or increase significantly in our main pot of special education funds, AB 602. So this shows you the difference in the percentage change in enrollment. So statewide, how many students there are. That's your blue line. The orange line is the percentage change in students with disabilities. And you see them diverging quite a bit, with the actual enrollment statewide of all students being relatively flat over this time period, and a significant increase in the percentage of students with disabilities. And we also see, though not reflected in this graph, a significant increase in students with high needs and more the need for more costly services. So we see that increasing while we don't see significant infusions of dollars in special education. So we have two pots of funds that the governor has proposed for teacher workforce development for special education. The idea here is to retain and mentor and improve teachers with or I should say teachers who teach in special education. Again, a significant focus here for workforce development. We've seen in the past special education as one of a handful of focus areas for teacher development in the past. Also bilingual teacher funding, as well as focus on STEM instruction. But here again, we're zooming in on special education specifically. The governor has proposed something a little bit different for career technical education than we've seen over the last couple of years. The governor proposes $200 million for a K-12 specific component of the community college administered strong workforce program. So right now, CTE programs are provided both at K-12 and the community college, and instead of creating a new categorical at the K-12 level, the governor has proposed to send $200 million to the chancellor's office at the community college to add a new component to their strong workforce CTE program. We expect that this will be quite controversial. K-12 is often reluctant to send its program and its dollars to other departments in California. What we have currently is the Career Technical Education Incentive Grants that we've had over the past 3 years. This is the last year of CTE-IG funding, again at that $200 million level. And there are some who would rather have this program continue, and we'll talk about that in a second. So what's the process from here? The governor has put out his budget on January 10th. The official budget bill was introduced both in the Senate and the Assembly. From here up through the beginning of February, the administration will release what's called trailer bill language that will provide more of the details of the proposals that I just have gone through. That also gives the budget subcommittees more information to discuss and examine those proposals, as well as to for the subcommittees to talk about their own priorities, and we'll talk in a second about what some of those things might be. For the most part, these are discussions, and decisions are usually delayed until the May revision, waiting for new revenue figures, as well as receiving feedback through this process from stakeholders. So the Legislative Analyst's Office always does its own economic revenue forecast as well as analyzes the governor's proposals. They also acknowledge that recent federal tax legislation will have, which provides significant uncertainties at this point. They are going to be doing their best to model what that looks like for California. They also note that under our current circumstances with the Proposition 98 minimum guarantee, while in past years we have seen significant increases in Proposition 98 dollars from January to May as new general fund revenues come in. Not to get into the 3 Proposition 98 tests because nobody wants to talk about that on a Monday evening, but the experts in Proposition 98 warn us that even if additional dollars come in the general fund between now and the May revision, we are not likely to see the kind of 40 cents on a dollar increase that we've seen in years past. The Legislative Analyst's Office is expecting more of a flat Proposition 98 minimum guarantee from January to May. So we will see more of their analysis over the next couple of weeks. So I mentioned other legislative priorities, and I've listed some that I know. I'm sure there are some that I don't, but I believe these will be some of the major topics, both in policy committee hearings as well as budget committee hearings. And the first one I'm sort of titling LCFF 2.0. Your local legislator, Assemblymember Al Maritsucci, is leading the charge to increase base grant funding for all districts under the LCFF. I'm working with him on behalf of Torrance. This is going to be a significant proposal from the Assembly member. We don't know what happens to the LCFF other than cost of living adjustments, and the Assembly member would like to see something better and more aspirational than going back to those 2007-08 funding levels that the LCFF has guaranteed. Early childhood education will continue to be a focus. We've seen both proposals for universal preschool and universal transitional kindergarten. After-school programs continues to be a priority. We saw some funding for the After-School Education Services Program, ACES. Also, some of those marijuana tax fund dollars are dedicated for after-school programs. So that's also going to be a discussion. What do those look like and how many funds are being provided through that new revenue source? I mentioned career technical education. Another plan, instead of sending the dollars over to the Chancellor's office, would be to continue the current CTE incentive grant program up at a level of $500 million. It's a different proposal that will be discussed. And then also an increase in funding for special education, both the major funding grant, AB 602, as well as potentially additional funds for preschoolers with disabilities and for students with the most severe and costly disabilities. So we always warn about the next recession, and it becomes more and a bigger warning the longer our current expansion goes on. And you'll note that at the end of 2018-19, the current economic expansion will be matched for the longest in post-war history. The governor has had a clear message about preparing for that next recession. He has done so in the Rainy Day Fund, and at School Services, we recommend to also prepare and expect the next recession because, again, we know that it's a matter of time as opposed to if a recession will happen. So our recommendations is always to maintain or build reserves, have realistic multi-year projections, and to adjust as revenue assumptions change throughout the year. So this sort of encapsulates, I think, what we have seen from the governor's budget. We have the good news of higher revenues in 2018-19. We see that Proposition 98 continues to increase. There are discretionary dollars for districts to choose how to use in the best manner possible for their location and their needs. But we also see some significant challenges, especially as we go into a cost of living adjustment only era after the LCFF is fully funded. Those are currently projected to be a 2 or 3% increase, and that often does not cover the costs of changing from one year to another, especially when you start to add in the increased employer costs in terms of CalPERS and CalSTRS, which continue to increase and were not factored in when the LCFF was created. Another factor is supplemental and concentration dollars are getting increased focus in Sacramento. The governor has proposed a website that would illustrate just exactly how much districts are receiving in supplemental and concentration dollar funding. There's been some discussion, or I should say lots of discussion, in terms of transparency in the LCFF and these specific dollars since the LCFF was created. And so the governor has said, let's have one special place that all districts will have that information, or I should say all that information will be provided by the state on those funds. And so it'll be very clear how much money is provided to districts in supplemental concentration funds once the LCFF is fully funded. And then again, we see a number of districts around the state looking at deficits in their third year, again, as the costs of doing business don't keep up with the cost of living adjustments that are projected from the Department of Finance. So our recommendation is to be cautious as you move forward. And again, thank you so much for having me here this evening to present the governor's budget information.
Any questions from members of the board? Mr. Steffen?
Just the last slide you showed discussed, I've never heard of it until just now, COLA only environment, cost of living allowance only environment. And so because you said, I think you said earlier, and you said earlier tonight, after LCFF is fully funded, there is no other mechanism to change or add to the increasing in the base grant and things like that.
Yes.
It's a static thing except for COLA.
Right. So we, over the implementation of the LCFF, the governor has had in his mind a funding level to get us back to in 2007-08. And he has decided that as of this year, with this $2.9 billion infusion, we will have fulfilled that promise of bringing us back to the purchasing power of 2007-08. And so over these years, it's been up to the governor's discretion and the legislature through negotiations how much gap funding closure happens, how much money is put in to fund the LCFF. As of this year, we're at 97% of full funding. After the LCFF is fully funded, we literally switch ed codes and formulas. And after we're at full funding, it's no longer a discretion of how much the governor and the legislature decide to put into the LCFF to move towards full implementation. The law says now that we're at full implementation, we apply a cost of living adjustment, which is a calculation that is in law, so not something that moves up and down by anyone's choice. It's a calculation, and that is what's applied to districts. So it's a cost of living adjustment this year, a 2.51% increase. In other years, there have been smaller increases. We've had years where there's been zero cost of living adjustment provided. The calculation was run and it was zero. Some years the calculation was run and it was negative. This was before LCFF. But that's what the law is right now. And so Assemblymember Maritsuchi is saying instead of just continuing to tread water at the effective 07-08 revenue levels for our funding under the LCFF, let's be more aspirational. Let's move closer towards more full funding under the promise of Proposition 98, heading towards the top 10 states. These are the ideas that the Assembly member is working towards to provide, again, more funding than just treading water under a cost of living adjustment only formula.
And one other.
Go ahead.
And the next line you talk about, you use the term districts must spend all money, and use that term must for supplemental concentration grants. And this new, is that a new dashboard, or is that what they're calling it?
Mm-hmm.
So the district, it'll say how much supplemental concentration grants each district, and the districts have to say how they're spending it on it.
So, and this is, so it's separate from the California dashboard, something that would be a new website, that would be one place that the state would run through that LCFF calculation and say, here is how much money Torrance Unified receives in supplemental and concentration dollars. The state wouldn't provide the information of how districts are using it. That's the kind of discussion and information that's provided in local budgets and local LCAPs. So to my knowledge, they're not planning to roll all that information up to that website. It's more of the state level down of what
Okay,
are
so
the
you have
revenues
a
provided.
total in one place, and then you have how it's spent and what the district provides back to the state.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mrs. Reagans?
Yeah, you've used the term fully funded a few different times, and to return to the 07-08 levels of funding. That sounds to me as though we're kind of saying, so that's all that we need in order to have money to run the school district, and we should be able to operate at maximum efficiency and proficiency at this point. Is that really true?
Well, and, you know, the term that the governor uses is fully fund, and the goal is 2007-08. But he acknowledged when he created the LCFF that this wasn't an adequacy model. For him, it was equity, which is why you see some districts receiving more than others. The state of California has decided that it is more equitable for funds to be distributed that way. But I think he has, I don't think the governor would tell you that it is an adequacy model. And so districts are finding significant new expenses that weren't in place in 2007-08. That was long before CalSTR's full funding plan came into place. That just came in a couple years ago, and those rates are continuing to march up for the next several years. CalPERS rates are also increasing to make sure that those retirement systems stay solvent. So those are costs that were not in place in 2007-08, as well as all significant other new increase in costs. We see that specifically also in the terms of special education, as more students with severe needs and costly services to provide to make sure that they get the adequate education that they deserve. Those are costs that just weren't factored in when the LCFF was created, which is why there's that next conversation.
So 07-08 was not the year that we were the top state in the union for education funding by any means?
No, that was our high watermark at that point. That's what we continue to look backwards in terms of the LCFF model. And again, to Vice President Stevens' point, we're just treading water when we get into cost of living adjustment only years.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Lee, any questions? You mentioned, I'm frantically looking for the slide, that the increase, there it is, historic percentage change in enrollment versus growth of students with disabilities. Slide 16.
Yeah. I'm heading back there.
That, students with disabilities is part of special ed. That's part of one of
Yes.
the bigger hits we get budget-wise on our end. That hasn't been increased from the 2007, 2008 levels either, has it?
Cost of living adjustment only. There has not been a significant increase in that. There was a little bit of a blip up in one-time funds with ARA, the American Recovery Reinvestment Act, a little bit of additional funds for special education. They were one-time. So overall, no, we have not seen significant increases in funding for special education for quite a while. And districts are funded on that lower level on terms of enrollment. So as enrollment is flat or declining, at the same time that expenses and the number of students with a disability is increasing, that's why you're seeing these significant increased costs for local school districts.
We continue to hear from these very smart people on either side that that's one of our biggest hits in our budget is special education needs. So, and that's part of the increase that you're describing.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I think, Mr. Lee.
When we look at special ed, one of the funding sources is the state of California. The other one is the federal government. I know there's been certainly a new administration over the last year and certainly a new Secretary of Education. What are we hearing as far as, it's our biggest unfunded mandate. What are we seeing from federal revenues on things like that? Any changes? I've heard rumors of maybe doing away with some mandates. I hear rumors of possible decreases in funding. I'm not up
Yeah.
to date on that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There are 3 pots of resources for special education, funds from the state, funds from the federal government, funds from the local district. The federal government has not been a great partner in terms of special education. The current federal special education law says that they are supposed to contribute 40% of those costs. They're more in the teens right now, 16 or so percent, in terms of how many funds that they're providing. The federal budget, special education has been relatively flat funded from the federal government through these continuing resolutions, with the exception that I mentioned of, as we were coming out of the Great Recession, the one-time infusion of special education dollars. My understanding from the Trump administration's federal budget proposal, it would likely be probably about the same amount of funds that we'd be getting from the federal government from special education. That said, the federal budget process, as we've all seen, is a little different than here in California. We've very much witnessed that over the last couple of days. So what we've been really under here in California has been the continuing resolution, which is why we've seen pretty much flat funding for special education from the federal government for a while, because they just sort of roll forward those amounts. And again, because there's the most significant, or I should say the federal government is probably the least significant amount of funds that we get for special education, the changes aren't terribly big for us.
There was some, I thought I saw, and maybe Dr. Manning can follow up on that, or Dr. Crumpy, that there was some talk of changing the requirements, or am I not? Okay, good, never mind.
Mr. Stefan.
I might never mind this one as well. Do I remember an email that had 2 figures of what we spent on special ed now and what we spent on it, and there was another now, it's in the 40s. Am I remembering an email? You're shaking your head, so I'm not crazy. Oh, well, can I get those? Does anybody remember the numbers? I think one with the top, what now is like 68 or something, and
I believe in 2007-8, the figure that we spent on special education was 48 million,
48.
and the current number is 60 million for
So
17-18.
Okay, so we've gone up to 12 million, right? Okay.
We're,
I thought I remember that.
and of that, what, we're receiving what, in money? How much of an encroachment into our general fund budget is that?
I'd have to get you that information.
You got a rough guess?
I don't.
Good.
That was smart. Any other
It's in the
questions from the
millions.
board? Thank you, and I think you have time to catch your flight.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on here, we have an audit presentation from certified public accountant from Negro. Dr. Stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Wormers. I'd like to introduce from our accounting firm, Nigro, Kevin Brainiac, who will present the audit report for our general fund as well as the bond measures YZ, T, and U.
Basic
Kevin.
finance.
Perfect. Good evening. I have the task of going through 5 reports in a relatively short amount of time. As much as I'd love to spend an hour talking about the audits, that probably won't happen.
We appreciate if you don't.
Absolutely. I'll start with the general process of the audit, because I think it's important to kind of understand that it's not just a one-time thing. It actually starts in the springtime with visits to the school sites. We get a chance to review the ASB procedures, pull samples, and get an idea of what the controls are over those particular areas. We also get a chance to visit the other school sites for attendance. We know that attendance is such a driver of the revenues in the state of California. Your audit you receive is not only a financial audit, it's also a compliance audit with certain laws and regulations that the state controller's office outlines. So after we finish those particular tests, then we get a chance to come to the district office and start reviewing internal controls. So those policies, procedures that you've set into place that actually dictate how things happen in the district, we have an opportunity to make sure that those are actually adequate, that those are designed properly, and that they provide the amount of segregation of duties to help keep processes from having things happen or having mistakes happen that aren't caught properly. After that, we come back after the district closes its books in September. We get an opportunity to come out and actually do what you associate the auditors with, right? Auditing the numbers, verifying the caches in the county treasury, that the accounts receivable add up, that the revenues reported are correct, and the expenditures are proper. And that all culminates in the production of the audit report. So I'll start and kind of identify the three major areas when you look at the audit report. I'm not going to take you through page by page, but I'll talk about the three main areas that I always think, if someone were to ask me what is the most important thing to identify, these are them. Actually, the first one is going to be the opinion letters inside the audit report. So if you see the auditor's letterhead on one of the sheets, those are important. Pages 1 and 2 are actually the auditor's opinion on the financial statements. So here's where we identify what management's responsibility is for the financials, what the auditor's responsibility is, and then we render our opinion. So we say the financial statements are reasonably stated, there were no material misstatements, no fraud, no laws and regulations were all properly followed. It takes us about 2 pages to say that, and you get what they call the unmodified audit opinion. So the unmodified refers to it's clean. There's nothing to report in regards to those respects. After that, inside the audit report, the other thing I would point your attention to are the financial statements themselves. But in conjunction with that, I always like to point out that there's a page that identifies audit adjustments if there were any noted by the auditors. There were no audit adjustments noted. So the financial statements you see here, you've seen them before, just in a different format. They were the unaudited actuals that you approved back in September. So it's important to understand that. The last thing I always like to bring up in this particular audit report is the findings section, probably where you turn first whenever you get your audit report. If you've been trained to read the audit report, you always flip there first.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens to be the low-hanging fruit of any school district is usually their ASBs, the number of transactions, the various people that are involved, the high level of turnover generally creates opportunities for improvement every year. And this year was no different. There are some opportunities for improvement. And that kind of concludes the general audit report. Any questions on that I can clear it up, or do you want me to jump right into the bonds?
It's the standard ASB scenario.
As standard as they can be, yeah.
That's always been, I've only been doing this for 7 or 8 years. You've been dinging us every time for ASB accounts. Is it,
We believe they're
are we
important.
better or worse than other districts?
You're on par.
On par?
If you have an ASB, you likely have an issue that gets identified.
Okay, I can deal with that. I mean, you're dealing with a zillion transactions and a whole bunch of, like you said, turnover and people and kids, the whole 9 yards. So if we're on par, then fine, I can deal with that.
Yes.
Mr. Wormers, if I may, I'm working with a couple local school districts to have FICMAT come out and do a training for ASBs. And so as soon as we establish a date, we'll be communicating that out to the schools and having training for both the clerical staff as well as activities, athletics directors, and administrators. So that is something that we're continuing to work on always. I know Ms. Chai and her department works with that as well, and based on the findings that are noted in the audit.
Okay. It's also a product of the quantity. I was blown away by the quantity of dollars that move through a high school ASB account.
Yeah.
You can
it is
be upwards of
shocking
$250,000
sometimes.
without even blinking.
Yes.
So, all right. I'll let you continue. Thank you.
Absolutely. Now we kind of flip the script when we start looking at the bond audits. So those are the other 4 reports I get to talk about. The alphabet soup of, T, Y, X, Z. So the important thing to note here is these are all reported in your regular district audit as well, because these audits represent not only a financial audit but also a performance audit. So when they lower the threshold to 55%, for a Prop 39 bond measure, it comes with a little bit extra responsibility in regards to reporting requirements and audit requirements. So not only do you form a bond oversight committee that helps to oversee the actual bond dollars and get special reports and then relay that information to the community, it also comes with the responsibility of having the audit process. So in this particular report, the first 10 or 11 pages represent the financial audit. So as you can see here, again, it comes with an opinion letter, again, the unmodified opinion, and then it gets into the actual financial statements, which report on its individual measure. So the sum of them would add up to what's in your building fund. And then the end of that is actually going to be what they call the performance audit. Performance audit is where we spend about 75% of our time on these particular audits. So this is where we actually read through the ballot language and then pull large samples to actually verify that what the actual invoice says is actually part of the ballot language. And again, if we were to identify any unallowable expenditures, they'd be reported as findings. There were no findings in these particular audits. That's our main process. We also have an opportunity to go out to school sites and look at the various invoices and then actually go kind of give it that sniff test and say, you know what, you said you bought X, Y, and Z. I want to go see it. I want to go smell the fresh paint, see the new carpet, kind of a sort of a test. We also get an opportunity to look at contracts. Can they play such an integral role in how things get purchased in regards to bond dollars? So we take a look at that process, again, the internal controls, make sure the lowest responsible bidders are chosen, and those sort of things. Any questions I can clarify on any of the bond audits? Again, they all have the same basic layout.
Again, we looked pretty good.
Again, looked pretty good, no findings, no recommendations on the particular bond audits.
I started on the Oversight Committee, and we found a typographical error for $1, but it's right after the contracts had started, so it's good to know they're still doing good.
Yep.
Very good, all right. That's it? Thank you for not taking an hour.
Absolutely.
We appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thanks for staying
Thank
with
you.
us.
I would, thank staff for a bang-up job on all this alphabet soup, as he says, of bond.
And now we're on to the student achievement presentation. I'm assuming that'd be Dr. Crumpy.
Good evening. As the achievement data is presented tonight, you will also get a look at the new dashboard. I think we've heard about that a little bit tonight, and well as the new state accountability system. This is the dashboard homepage, and anytime someone looks at this on the CDE website, this is the Torrance Unified School District achievement at a glance. All the information on one page. It includes all of the accountability areas that the state is holding us accountable for, as well as the 4 local indicators that we discussed last July that are all met. As you can see, so just looking at this, you see circles of blue and green here, which is very good. So all of our general achievement data within the Torrance Unified School District is in the high and very high areas. We're going to now kind of take a look at each of the areas, and starting with graduation rate. You may notice over on the far right side, there are subgroup data that are in the orange or red, which are our danger areas that we're going to discuss. If you approve tonight, there's actually a consent item agenda to make South Bay High School, which is that non-public ward of the court school, and remove it from our data. It was there, and we worked successfully through the CDE. Every student at that school is a foster student, and they stay at the school between 6 and 9 months, which would mean that their graduation rate is 0. And that was affecting our graduation rate. So since this data has come out, they've not changed it in the system yet, but they're with your approval tonight of removing South Bay High School and making it an alternative school within accountability, that changes that data. So here are our graduation rates. And this, you may remember this color-coded state report. It's called the 5x5. And this really shows the biggest change between our prior accountability and our new accountability. Before, we all had to hit the level of proficient within each academic area, and now it is a combination of status, which is how well we do, and change, which is how did we do based on last year. So you see here our graduation rate, as our status is very high. For graduation rate, that means that it's above 95%, and all 4 of our comprehensive high schools are in that same range where we are maintaining that very high graduation rate, which is very good for Torrance. Academic progress is next, and I want to note that this is for grades 3 through 8. 11th grade also takes the test, and the state is using their results in a new indicator that is just coming out called College and Career Indicator. So they've actually pulled off of the results for 11th grade, and that will be part of that indicator. So when we receive academic progress, it's important to remember that our English language arts and math scores go through the completion of 8th grade. In this case, both our district-wide scores are in the high range. Our English language arts maintained, and we really saw, it was flat, we saw no change, and our mathematics increased their scores from the prior year. English learner progress, there's less information on this slide because there's just, one group. It is also in the high area, meaning our students are learning it and gaining in their English proficiency. And you see that it increased. I think this is important to note. When we got a first glimpse of a draft of this dashboard last year, this was our one indicator that was in the yellow and in the caution area, and that is now increased to this green high area. And you can see why that improvement is, because they have increased in their scores. We do not yet know, because the CELT test, which is the measure for this achievement target, is now gone, and we will be starting very soon a new test. So we're really unsure what they're going to do to give us a status and change next year, comparing apples and oranges. So that's yet to be seen. I will report back as soon as we get that information. Suspension rate. Now, you may notice something a little different here in that we've included all the schools here. Not that you can see them from that far away, but the new ed code is required that for suspension rate that we have to show we have to report to the board the progress of suspension rate by school. Overall, our rate is low, so this is the opposite of all of the rest of the scores, because if you have very high, that's actually in the red down there. You don't want a very high suspension rate, so very low is really what you're looking for. Overall, our district-wide scores are in the low range. We do not have schools in those lowest two rows of high or very high, but you do see some in the orange, and we're working with those schools to help assist in their plan for improving their suspension rates.
Dr. Crumpy, two of those are elementary schools.
Yes. Now, I think important, we could talk a long time about this. You may remember we had one subgroup last year in the red, and it was suspension rate for American Indian students. And many times when the suspension rates are low, and you have a run-on incident, 5 laser pointers all showed up at school and kids were using them, and you might have had 2 suspensions in one year and 7 the year that following year. Sometimes we're yet to be seen on this, how small numbers of suspension rates and then a change over time affects these rates. We do know that the reason that the American Indian subgroup was in the red last year is because the prior year we had 0 suspensions, and then the last year we had 1. And so that you do that math, that was a 100% increase in suspension rates, and it moved it into the red. So we're, I think it's more important that then those schools look and analyze and see if it really is cause for alarm, and then they have a plan in place if they need to address it.
Thank you.
That's a great question. We also are required, and I'm going to show you all of our endangered ones in a second, to show suspension rates by demographic program. And you do see here I've got circled 2 of our subgroups that we are concerned about. And you can see that you can take I'm not going to go all the way back, but you can see in the initial home dashboard where there were suspension rates, all of those are clickable to then drill down and be able to see what demographic data within each of those subgroups gives you all demographic data and also programmatic data, special ed students, low-income students, and so you can get all of that data quite quickly. What you see here in this slide are district-wide, all of our areas that are in the orange or red. And we have quite a number of them. You'll see in suspension rate, homeless is our one red area, and we have been addressing that, as well as foster youth. Foster youth is new. It's not been a subgroup that the state of California has been tracking, or we have not been able to get that information, and so it is new this year. We were given an initial suspension rate last year, this is why you see it there. You actually, if you just look at how well they're doing across the board, they're very low in every single category, and so we really have a focus on our foster youth.
Mr. Lee?
Yeah, Dr. Crumpy, could you end up theoretically with a kid as an English learner and homeless and sociological
That's a great
disadvantage?
question. Absolutely. Students can be counted multiple times. They can be homeless. They can be an English learner who's socioeconomically disadvantaged, have disabilities, and have an ethnicity category tied to them as well. And they're in multiple categories. And we often see that.
Okay, thank you.
We have 140 students who are homeless.
We do.
That's got to be a challenge.
It is, and a growing foster population as well. So with that, and I think are some of our next steps, I think important for some of these, and especially homeless and foster youth, district-wide, if we have 15 foster youth, make up a subgroup. So as long as a district has 15 students, we're held accountable and have to come up with a plan. Every other category is 30 students. At many of the schools, they don't have that many students to give a subgroup. So taking homeless students, for example, in the red and suspension rate, schools are not receiving any of those warnings in orange or red because they don't have 30 homeless students at an individual school. Or, and for suspension rate, that is K-12. So we're working with the school sites to ensure that regardless of whether it is a subgroup at their own site, that because it is district-wide caution in orange or red, that they are also addressing it back on their campuses. So what are our next steps? We're not going to wait till next year to start addressing these areas. This is data that we have now. So one of the things that we're doing, and this is new for our sites, is that as they're doing this same report back at their school sites with their own data for their site. They're going back into their single plan for student achievement that you've already approved for this year. And they're adding any orange or red warning areas as an identified need into their single plan. They're then reviewing their action steps that they've written, and they're analyzing whether or not the actions that they had already planned on doing will be sufficient to address these new identified needs that have come to light. If they are not, they are revising their single plans as necessary. Through January and February, site administration are sharing this information with their sites, and they're getting input from their staff, their school site council, their LMACs, and they're bringing it back on Monday, March 5th as part of our LCAP process. And then we will be sharing this information with our LCAP advisory committee moving forward. These at-risk areas are the impetus to drive any change that we'll be looking at for our LCAP for this year, or I guess for next year. And that's it.
Any questions from the board? For those playing along at home, what does LCAP stand for again?
Local Control and Accountability Plan. So that is the plan that is that when the local control funding formula was authorized, they required this annual updated plan to go along with that funding.
Thank you. You and I knew that, but. All right. Moving along, we now get a report from the Torrance Education Foundation. Susan.
Good evening to everybody. Happy New Year from Torrance Education Foundation. I have three things to share with you this evening. First is that I think I told you the last time I spoke that we were endeavoring this year to be sure that we opened summer school registration for South Bay and Richmond Academy as early as possible. We learned last year that families would appreciate the opportunity to lock in their summer activities for their students earlier in the year than has been the case in the past. So I'm happy to announce that high school registration is already open. We announced that to our former students' families by email, and I want to make everyone aware tonight that families may go online to our South Bay and Richmond Academy registration website, which is www.tefsbea.org, and find the registration information for both the first and second semesters of high school summer school. And it's already available. And we will be opening by February 16th the registration for elementary school and middle school students, and this is, in that case, a few weeks ahead of prior years, and in the case of high school, we're about 2 months ahead of prior years. So we hope that helps our families in Torrance and surrounding communities get their students' summer plans in place so that they can make their family plans too. The next thing is that we have two exciting annual fundraising events coming up in the next months for raising funds to support our district and our students and our teachers. The first is the annual car drawing raffle that we are still very grateful to Toyota for providing to us. There will be a beautiful RAV4 XLE hybrid SUV with all-wheel drive awarded to some lucky winner who purchases a raffle ticket. The raffle tickets will be going on sale starting in February, and the winner will be drawn at the other exciting fundraising activity that's coming up, which is our annual fundraising dinner, which this year has a different theme than has been the case in the past 3 years. We are shifting gears and putting away our cowboy boots and pulling out our little black dresses. The theme this year is Eat, Drink, and Be Giving, a black and white affair. So that will take place on Saturday, the 14th of April at the Doubletree Hotel. There will be more information forthcoming about that, but we will also draw the winner of the car raffle that evening. Can I answer any questions?
Do I have to buy a tux?
You don't have to wear a tux. We are encouraging black and white cocktail attire, but you may choose your own attire as you wish.
Cummerbund, just a
My
little.
wife will tell me. My wife will tell me.
Oh,
I think.
yeah, have her call.
I get to
Yeah,
the record.
I'm sure that our wives will tell us.
Decision's way above our pay grade.
Yeah,
so we
we'll
can
be-
try.
we'll be told.
You're not wearing that is a common theme.
You have a,
I have no comment.
you have a
No
formal
comment.
Hawaiian.
I have a formal Hawaiian shirt.
I do have a black Hawaiian shirt, that would
I've
work.
got a very nice black and white Hawaiian shirt, but I've been told more than once, you're not wearing that, so.
Trying
I'll
to
even
think
try
of
to go there.
something witty to say about black and white, but I can't. Sorry.
You know, cowboy was so much easier.
Okay, no questions?
Actually, I do have a question.
Yes.
The car raffle will be managed by ambassadors at the schools, as it has been in past years?
Yes, that is the case. Actually, my email to the schools and the ambassadors will be going out tomorrow, inviting them to a kickoff information meeting, and our goal is to begin sales as early as possible in February.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now a report by the Torrance Council of PTAs. Nanette?
Hi, good evening and Happy New Year. Thanks for allowing me to share a couple of goodies with you. Very soon we have our College and Career Fair, which is a joint project between TUSD and Torrance Council. This year it'll be at Torrance High School on February 24th from 11 a.m. till 2 p.m. It's free and open to all, and although I know high school students will probably be especially interested in it, we have, I think there are a lot of elementary, probably middle school students that would also get a lot out of it. We expect about 100 or so representatives from universities, trade schools, and branches of the military, and we'll be hosting concurrently running seminars throughout the day covering all things career and college readiness. So that's really exciting. We also will be hosting a parent education night. The theme is What is on Your Child's Mind? And that evening will feature, I believe, 3 or 4 high school students, a panel of them, and it's I want to say an adult moderator. The students will be sharing with us things that, well, I guess, that make them anxious or kind of stress them out, and how we as parents and caregivers can really support them and love them and kind of walk that journey with them. It's something altogether different, I think, to hear it from them directly. And I was told last year this was a really well-attended event, and it was really worthwhile. And a lot of parents walked away with insight that they would have maybe otherwise not had from their own student. Anyone who has a teenager knows how hard it is getting anything out of them. We're hosting it 2 different nights, on the north side at North High School in the library on March 5th, and then at South High School March 12th, both from 7 to 8:30 p.m. And you can find all of that information on torrancecouncilofptas.org. That's it. Any questions?
Any questions? No, I think we're set.
And you can wear whatever you want.
Yay, there you go.
Thank you.
Hawaiian shirts back in. All right.
All right, moving on to the student representative and recognition. The only thing Connor's thinking of is finals is in 2 days, and I'm sitting here at 8 o'clock at night doing nothing, so. I have kids at home studying their tails off, so I understand what you're going through. As soon as he's done talking and he gets his little certificate, I'm going to throw him out of here.
So at West, we've just had our ASP mixer with all the local schools. We've also had our annual Powder Puff game at lunch where the senior girls play football and the guys cheerlead. We also had Spirit Week, where each day we dressed up with a theme, and we also had lunchtime games by the Secretary of Spirit. We had our annual NHS canned food drive, and on the Thursday before winter break, ASB has surprised the school with bringing out Santa Claus before the holidays. And then after winter break, our dance department had its winter dance showcase at the Armstrong Theater on the 10th and 11th. And also after winter break, our gym was finally opened, so we finally got to have our first basketball game last Friday. And then since this week is finals, we have decided to give away free refreshments before school on Wednesday. And for Thursday finals, we decided to cut ribbons out for everyone at West with each person's name on it, along with a treat that says "Good luck on finals." Love ASB on them to give them a little bit of support. Right now in ASB, we're playing our first lip dub, where the school gets to show off its school spirit with all the clubs, sports, academics, and it is all in a video, well organized by our ASB. And then lastly, right now we're playing our winter sports rally that's coming up on February 2nd, Multicultural Day on February 23rd, and our West High's Best Dance Duo on March 23rd.
Very good. I get to give you a certificate, and you get to take your name tag home with you, so you
Should
can.
we ask him about his budget?
We could ask him about the budget.
About his ASB financial procedures.
We don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
Now we know.
This is of high perceived value.
Who's timing this? Do you have a timer on this thing?
We are now into the oral communications, unscheduled hearings part of the non-agenda items of our meeting. We set aside 30 minutes for that, and we have about 15 cards. Anybody who wants to speak needs to fill out a card. Everybody's done that? So we have about 15 cards, so we're going to go down to about 2 minutes as opposed to 2.5 minutes. That makes card number 15. So Terry, can you set it at 2.5 minutes? I'd like to start with, and I got to read this first. The Board of Education welcomes input from the public in order to discuss district business in an orderly manner for the privacy and safety of speakers and to help staff respond more directly. The board policies require that public presentations to the board comply with certain procedures, including Speakers to non-agenda items may address only items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Time allotted for such presentations is usually limited to 3 minutes. We're going to take it to 2.5 so we can get it all within 30 minutes. Total time allotted for public input for non-agenda items is limited to 30 minutes. A speaker may not relinquish his or her time to another. When addressing the board, speakers are requested to state their name, address the president from the podium, and adhere to the applicable time limits. Complaints against employees or students will normally be heard in closed session, and the district's complaint procedure should be followed before discussion with the board. The board may remove disruptive individuals and order the room cleared if necessary. Any person who willfully disturbs any public school meeting is guilty of a misdemeanor, Education Code 32210. So I'm going to lead off here with Jen Harris.
We're sticking to the 30 minutes total?
Trying to, yeah. So 2.5 minutes.
I'm just going to keep it running.
Okay, so well, you can do 2.5. I'm going to try to keep it at 2.5 minutes, Jen.
Got it. Hello, everyone. Thanks for welcoming me here. I have brought some flyers for our Reinforcing Yesterday to Build Tomorrow Parent Summit. It will be this Saturday, January 27th at 8:30 a.m. at Torrance Memorial Medical Center in the Hoffman Health Conference Center. I sent emails today with the flyers in there, and we're hoping we can get the information out. I'm waiting to hear back from Tammy as far as the approval for the flyers so we can get it sent out to the schools. We want to have a great showing for parents. We plan on having breakfast, lunch, giveaways. We'll also have childcare and teen care as well, so they'll have their own youth space, and we're just going to have a really good time. And lastly, I'll say this week is the National Drugs and Alcohol Facts Week, so we're encouraging everyone to live drug-free and encouraging our young people to live drug-free, especially since we're in a time where marijuana has been legalized recreationally in California, and the perception of harm for young people has decreased, and so we want to make sure we're protecting our students. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Megan Sampedro and Andrea Gonzalez, followed by Julie Schenkel. I'm going to call who's on deck, so we keep you all going moving forward.
Okay. Hello, School Board Council. We hope you're having a good night. We are students attending West High. My name is Andrea Gomez, and this is Megan Sampedro. We are here speaking to you with concerns about students in the Torrance district. Most teenagers, sadly, go through a depressive episode at least once in their lives. Most students have been diagnosed with depression or any form of mental illnesses, i.e. anxiety, panic disorder, bipolar, etc. Thanks to the Civic Action Project or government class, we have the chance to bring awareness to issue with a proposal in which you will hopefully consider. Everybody has problems, and some take it better than others, and some ignore the situations, but not everyone works the same. Most people disregard the topic or tend not to believe in mental illnesses, which makes people suffer with them discouraged to seek help. Teens who do not receive treatment with their mental illness could develop in compulsive addictions that could make it into adulthood, or worse, not make it there at all.
Our proposal for our Civic Action Project is for schools to start a mental health awareness week. We both understand that it would be up to you guys, like what exactly you put into like the week. But we suggest that we have like a small assembly, presentations or PSAs during tutorial, as you know we have that during the week, or during SSR. And then emails will be sent out on how to handle different types of mental illnesses. Volunteer speakers to speak to the students, or pamphlets with different sites that can help us understand help us understand and get more information about mental illness. Yes, we do, learn about it in health classes, but it only talks about it very vaguely, and I know I don't really remember personally much about learning about it, so it would just be better to keep it refresher.
And then some benefits would include better informed students and faculty members, lessen suicide thoughts / talk, and students could feel more comfortable to speak out and what would be going on. Students would know what to do if someone is trying to harm themselves or feeling off themselves, and it would be a big step to spreading awareness and knowledge rather than ignoring it.
Very good. I'm touched by this. My father-in-law is a chemical dependency counselor and psychologist, so this is a good thing, and I'd love to see us follow up. I'm looking at the doctors in that area, so if you don't know Dr. Dugal, you'll get to meet her very soon. So,
oh, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Julie Schenkel, followed by Deborah Tabush.
Good evening, members of the board. I am Julie Schenkel. I am the Torrance Teachers Association Treasurer and our representative to CTA State Council. And tonight I'm coming forward to read a few items into the public record. For a couple of months now, our members have been participating in a Tell Your Story campaign, and a few of us are going to be taking turns reading some of these to you tonight, just to make sure that you are indeed seeing them and hearing them. This is from a third grade teacher. I love being a teacher and know I was meant to do this job. I care deeply about my students, that they all learn and feel safe and content in my care. I sincerely want for them to grow up to lead happy and productive lives. I have always been open to learning and trying new lessons and techniques. I do the most I can do to make learning meaningful and enjoyable. In the last 3 to 4 years, TUSD, for whom I have worked my entire career, has let my fellow teachers and me down. Without consulting classroom teachers, select TUSD administrators have engaged in rampant, unproductive spending, millions of dollars, on outside programs and consultants, including Solution Tree, RTI, PBIS, etc., that have not made a positive difference for our students. Even worse, the district has continued to spend while teachers have told them again and again that the programs are not working, and have continued to pull teachers from their classrooms for unnecessary trainings. The administrators who made these decisions have not consulted teachers about the effectiveness of these expensive programs, nor have they or any school board members spent any substantial time in a classroom recently. For this reason, I stand united with my fellow TUSD teachers and urge administrators to cut the fat now and stop spending millions of tax dollars on programs that don't directly benefit our students. This is from a 5th grade teacher. Most teachers, administrators, and school board members have chosen their careers to help children. We need to work together with open, honest dialogue toward that goal. It seems that over the past few years, the 3 entities have become more polarized, which results in a lack of communication that ultimately does a disservice to the students we are all trying to help. My main areas of concern are unilateral curriculum and intervention decisions, inadequate quality training, excessive focus on assessment and data, as well as hijacked instructional and professional development time. We must continue to find common ground, working collectively to make the best decisions for all stakeholders, most importantly, our students. From a 2nd grade teacher. Dear school board, before programs are rolled out, have you asked the experts in the room how they feel? The experts are current classroom teachers.
We're out of time there, Julie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Tabush, followed by Aaron Mance.
Deb Tabush, TTA President. Good evening, Cabinet, School Board, and President Wormers. I'm here this evening speaking for all Torrance teachers. Tonight, teachers from across the district stood in solidarity to voice their frustrations of being dismissed. They were here tonight asking you to respect their voice, value their expertise, and treat them as the experts in the room. Each of us teach our students to be free thinkers and to think outside the box. Yet we are reminded on a daily basis by district constraints which keep us in a box while continuously pulling us away from our students. The time for teacher autonomy is now. The time to hear our voice is now. The time for change is now.
Aaron Mance.
Good evening. My name's Erin Mance, and I'm a resident of Torrance. Mainly, my draw here is in support of the youth leagues at Hamilton School, but in all honesty, I know that's not high on your priority list. You're more concerned about the underutilization of the school, or that's the term that I've heard. So I thought maybe we could touch on that just a little bit. So I did a little research with the adult school catalog, which I look at every time it comes. because I'd like to take some fun courses, and everything I find that I like is at Libby or Griffin, and I'm not going to drive that far after a full day of work, since I only live 7 blocks from Hamilton. And I've heard my neighbors echo the same comments. So I looked at the catalog to see if there's any disparity in the courses, and yes. So if Hamilton Adult School is being underutilized, it's because it's being made to be. For the career courses there are 11 courses that are taught. 2 classes are taught at Hamilton. There are 17 taught at Levy and 4 at Griffin. For the community interest ones, the dance, the paint, what have you, there are 62 courses taught. 11 are taught at Hamilton, 36 at Levy, and 22 at Griffin. It's a little bit of a disparity there. I think maybe you could transfer more courses or classes to the Hamilton School, and it would be more utilized, and I think you would have a lot more North Torrance residents partaking in the classes there. That might help solve some of the problem. Thank you so much for your time.
I forgot to call my daughter's teacher on deck. Kim Lee, followed by Dave Brent.
Oh, am I on?
You're on.
I'm on.
Sorry, I forgot to call you on deck.
That's okay. Thank you for having me. I'm going to continue reading with some of the messages from the teachers in the district. Torrance Unified once stood out as the best district to be a part of, yet now it just blends in with all the rest. Test scores, data entry, endless PDs and trainings, along with micromanaged schedules and PLC times are a detriment to not only us as teachers, but our students as well. Education isn't about filling a bucket, it's about lighting a fire. Please consider including Torrance teachers when making huge decisions like Solution Tree, ASOP, new phone system, etc. We are not included, yet we are the ones in the trenches working with the kids each day. We have a valuable knowledge that isn't being overlooked. Please open your minds and hearts and listen to teachers. In my 23 years at Torrance Unified, we have never voted down a contract. Something is very wrong this time. Our country was built on compromise. Let's both start listening to each other. Dear school board members, as a veteran teacher of 18 years, I feel that the current leadership and school board of TUSD does not value or respect me as the expert in the classroom. Second grade teacher. The reasons I am frustrated as a TUS teacher, the added meaningless work that I am expected to do takes away time from my teaching, F&Ps, gate testing, and the SBAC, just to name a few. Time spent giving portfolio tasks, ELL folders, is wasted since no one looks at them anyway. My student test scores are good and have been for over 25 years. I don't understand why the district is trying to fix what ain't broke. I am a professional, and all I ask is to be treated with respect and professionalism. I feel that I truly deserve it. I am not a number on a spreadsheet, a STRS payment, or an emotional female. I am a teacher that brings value to this district and the city. Treat me with respect, ask for my opinion, settle our contract now. Thank you.
Good evening. Brent, followed
yes.
by Stephanie Elwood. Pardon me. Sorry.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Dave Brent, and I live in south central Torrance, up along Hawthorne Boulevard near Rolling Hills Road. Currently, there is a large apartment complex that's being proposed for the corner of Via Valmonte and Hawthorne Boulevard. And the complex will house possibly 500 to 750 people. Many of these will be children. And my concern is, at this time, there are no sidewalks to and from this project area. Nothing going up Via Valmonte or down Hawthorne Boulevard. And children in this complex, no doubt, will be going to Richardson Middle School and Riviera Elementary School. And so not all of them will have rides. Quite a few will probably walk. So at this time, I'm just wondering, whose responsibility would it be to ensure the safety of the children by finishing up the sidewalks ultimately? And secondly, will the City of Torrance provide bus service for those who might need it in that complex?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Stephanie Elwood, followed by Margaret Talamantes.
Good evening. I'm going to continue telling our story. I've taught at TUSD for nearly 20 years. I've never seen the morale this low, teachers this stressed out and exhausted, and yet more work keeps coming. Attendance issues burdened us with additional reports, and that took more time out of my day. New grade program came with very little training, more time out of my day. And this grade program needs extensive adjustments, more time out of my day. A new phone system came with no training, more time out of my day. We don't have enough subs, I get asked to sub, it's more time out of my day. Just throw it at us, we'll figure it out. It's more time out of all of our days. All kinds of trainings that I didn't want, that I don't feel I need, disrupted my curriculum repeatedly for years. And yet, an expensive RTI program just keeps costing more money all the time. Additional RTI training just keeps coming. I've yet to hear that this is helping anyone. We were never ever shown models of districts with similar demographics. The improvements were shown from low-performing schools where there's a lot of room for improvement. And yet we hear that there's no money even to give us a cost of living adjustment. We implore you to stop looking for extra money and start looking at how money is being spent currently. Spend better, give us some relief from all this extra work, and honor us with a reasonable compensation. We just want to get back to doing what we do best, teaching. As a longtime Torrance teacher, I have experienced much change in education, some for the better, some not so good. The last few years, I feel like many major decisions are being made in TUSD without the knowledge and agreement of teachers. Please include us. We are all TUSD. I'm a TUSD husband, and I'm tired of my wife working late, both at school and home. I do not want her totally exhausted after work. Torrance teachers are the glue of TUSD. Value your teachers by listening to how and what type of support they desire. My son wants his mom to be home more.
Margaret Talamantes, followed by Aaron Voigt. Oh, very good. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm here tonight to discuss the Hamilton surplus process. I believe the district is in need of cash, although TUSD has not advised the community why they are in need of this cash. The district has not come forward to tell the community why they need this money. But I know this is not surprising. Honest actions and dialogue, particularly with the North Torrance community, have been lacking from day one of the surplus process. TUSD has deliberately been keeping this potential sale lease very quiet. So quiet, in fact, that no one in the community knew about it until local neighborhood groups started advising their fellow residents about this process. In a time when citizens resent and distrust government, the disingenuous actions by your organization has reinforced to our community that we cannot trust government. As our elected officials whose jobs are to be stewards of our public funds and uphold democratic decision-making processes, you should be requiring TUSD to be transparent and fair at all times. In the case of Hamilton, you have failed your constituents. The matter in which TUSD has hand-selected Hamilton over Levy was deceitful, undemocratic, unfair, and non-transparent. As the North Torrance community is learning about this situation, they are disappointed with TUSD and the board members. The hand-selected process of Hamilton had no public process, and it was a deceitful way to eliminate resources in North Torrance. North Torrance residents will be looking for new elected officials in April and November of 2018 who represent our children and community's needs. It has been rumored that NTGSL, the girls softball league, will be relocated to elementary schools or to North High School. In discussing these options with our AYSO and other sports league colleagues who practice at these locations, we have discovered that the loss of field space to North Torrance High or elementary schools will negatively impact other sport leagues in our communities. If we were to take over together, combined between NTGSL and NTLL over 4 fields, this would severely impact North High or any North Elementary School. And we don't want to do this to North Torrance. Additionally, members of our organizations are on the field as early as 3:30 p.m. on school days. This makes supervision for elementary and high school administrators more challenging when non-TUSD present persons will be coming onto their campuses when children are still present. Additionally, our organizations use these fields year-round, weekends, winter, spring breaks, practices, and tournaments starting as early as 7 a.m. However, in the end, if it's the direction of the board to sell or lease Hamilton, I am suggesting that Levy adult education field be split evenly between North Torrance girls softball and Torrance girls softball. By sharing the Levy fields evenly, TGSL keeps their fields and facilities, has ample parking, and will end up with the same facilities as Torrance girls softball. One league cannot have better facilities, or this would create an unfair playing advantage, which is subject to the Title IX violation. In conversations with the State Department of Education, they've advised me that Title IX would apply to this situation. Please consider splitting Levy between TGSL and TGSL. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Voigt, followed by Teresa Belmonte.
My name is Aaron Voigt. I'm a teacher at South Torrance High School, and this is a colleague of mine, Gail Cardenas. I'm just going to be reading off some of the concerns that fellow teachers at South High have in regards to other issues that have already been brought up. I have about 9 of them here. I'll get through as many as I can at a time allotted. My concern is that TUSD continues with what is going on currently, that 3 things are going to happen to teachers here. One is teachers are going to start to leave the profession and seek employment in other areas where their voices are heard and respected, because here they are not. Number 2, they may find a different school district where ideas like critical thinking, healthy debate, and constructive dialogue are actually put into practice, and not part of a motto that's put on a website or slapped on a WASC report. 3, teachers will become apathetic. They will still love to teach, but the passion and the intent with which they began will be quelled, because such attributes are punished instead of exalted. Another one, the TUSD district administration policies appear to be driven not by what is best for the student as a whole, but rather what data can be extracted from the student and applied to whatever agenda that individual has according to what they want. Another one says, I believe there's multiple principles at play here, both in the high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, and at Hamilton Adult School, more concerned about the money than the community. Another teacher, this district has spent millions of dollars on PLC, RTI, software programs, sub-requests, grading systems, not to mention the approximately dozen assistant principals which have been added without almost any teacher input. And the input that was procured was done so from a hand-picked group of followers. Another teacher, if this district goal is for teachers to be able to craft clear and logical lesson plans, set attainable goals, allocate time properly, match differentiated instruction to individual students' needs, and align it all with local, state, and national curriculum and testing standards, then congratulations, you're on your way to creating excellent robots. Another teacher, we are here because we understand and believe that there is more to students than the extraction of data. We are psychologists, therapists, and mentors. We listen, we tutor, we advise, we assist, and we teach. We are here to help these young men and women navigate the landmines of life. There are no lesson plans or curriculums for that. Last one. Teachers believe that every student should be treated with dignity and respect. We simply ask to be treated with the same respect, and based on the contract that we have seen, we are not respected. That's why we are here, and we are not going anywhere. Thank you.
Teresa Belmonte, followed by Donna Delgado.
Hi, good evening, school board and administration. I'm here tonight, as I've been many times, to ask the school board to please reconsider the decision with Hamilton. I'm not here tonight representing the girls softball league or the boys baseball league, even though those are both near and dear to my heart. However, I'm here as a resident, a parent of, and a community member of North Torrance. The students and their families of North Torrance community and the community as a whole are dependent upon the board getting this right. We are being asked to accept that we are surplus, that our community is only as good as the resources we have to give. Well, unfortunately, we have to come together and plead our case in front of here, downright beg, and the lack of concern is really kind of disheartening. Growing up in Torrance, you hear the different stereotypes and you try to not consider yourself as one of those, but then when you get older, we realize that those stereotypes do apply, they just don't apply to us. So we are groomed to think one way, and yet you guys don't execute those values. You teach us to, have tolerance, be inclusive, all of this stuff, and yet we don't feel that way from you guys. So we'd like you to reconsider your thought with that. I'd also like to leave you with a quote from a couple things, actually. I'm getting off course here because a couple things bother me as I'm sitting here. I've been here a few times, and this is the second or third teachers group that we've had here with us that feels the same way we do and not being heard. We understand that you guys are here to, benefit the students, but there's also more components to that. I think that our students would be more successful, our teachers would be more successful, and our community would be more successful if we were all included in this decision process together. I heard a couple of things that were a little bit disheartening at this last 7-11 committee meeting where they had the public input. Unfortunately, I didn't see any of you board members there. Hopefully you got to see the recordings. But they had mentioned that the trend said that student enrollment was going to decline. And, so that, I think, was against everything that she presented earlier. Not only that, the last time the student, population declined, or you guys, the trends were going to decline, you got rid of 4 schools and then had to bring 2 back not even a couple years later. It makes no sense to keep getting rid of assets when we could be utilizing all of these benefits. There's enough people in this community, both on the north side, the south side, and all the way through, that we can all be productive and help this district thrive the way it needs to, but we need to be involved. I think that you isolating everybody like individually is definitely not working. So, thank you.
Thank you. Donna Delgado, followed by Gail of South High.
Hello, my name is Donna Delgado, and I live in the North Torrance area. I have a handicapped daughter. So I'm going to say right now, North Torrance is the stepchild of the Torrance Unified District. I've been fighting this district for 15 years. My daughter's going to be 30 on Thursday. And I just can't believe that you guys are trying to close down Hamilton. It is such a meaning for a handicapped child to be able to go to school in their own community. I fought against you guys taking classes away from Arlington Elementary. I fought against you guys of moving her class into a little dungeon at Arlington, a little room with no windows. I fought against you guys of putting a handicapped bathroom for my daughter. I had to threaten you guys to turn you into the state of California. So North Torrance is the stepchild of the Torrance district, and like she said, I wasn't surprised when she said the classes, not very many offered in North Torrance at Hamilton, because that's how you guys are for North Torrance schools. You just brush them aside and just take care of the South and the West or whatever. And that is just so disheartening that you would try to sell Hamilton School to a developer that wants to put condos in there. That is so discouraging, and I just can't believe it. But yeah, I can, because that's how you guys are. And does anybody live in North Torrance? Well, I'm going to say shame on you for not sticking up for us. Shame on you. Shame. But you're not representing us. You are not representing us. I would be ashamed to sit up there and say you live in North Torrance.
I'm not ashamed at all. I like
Well,
living in North
I love it, and you should fight for it more than.
I do.
Well, I don't think you are in this situation with Hamilton.
I'm sorry, you don't think so.
Oh, I don't think so, and I think a lot of people here don't think you are either.
I hear you.
Another one of my daughter's teachers.
Good evening, my name is Gail, and I've been teaching for 22 years. In the past 5 years, I've seen many changes in our district. Content standards, grading styles, Naviance, state testing, state testing format, just to name a few. All of these changes were made for the benefit of the students. This year, I have witnessed the most changes. Power School, the bell schedules, we have 6 of them at South High. Even my phone has changed. But the most significant change is intervention. All different schools name it different names, but at South High, we call it Spartan Seminar. With time and practice, most of us have figured out the new systems in place, except this intervention period. At our school, about 5% of the students not succeeding in their math class, because I'm a math teacher, are sent to 2 30-minute sessions to get help. These students are identified when they don't pass the weekly common formative assessments. They sign up for a seminar led by a teacher not their own to relearn the material. So for the past 2 quarters, I've been given the task to review and reteach to students whose motivation does not match half of my passion for teaching. This task is very difficult because I'm not familiar with their individual skills. There is no connection, no buy-in from the student. This leads them to becoming discipline problems. In addition, for the past 2 quarters, 1 hour each week, I have had to prepare a lesson, grade their exit ticket, as well as discipline them. I am exhausted. My experience during this time has led me to the conclusion that 50% of the students who attend don't really care about improving their grades. They told me so. The ones who don't show up are not accounted for. At first, this idea seemed great, but at what cost? The middle student is neglected. Who's helping them? The librarians have to watch up to 3 classes, while seminar teachers like myself have to reteach a handful of students. 4th period teachers with a prep also have to watch these students. The secretaries have to make copies, cut out passes for them to go to back to classes. So if you take 10 teachers that have 20 seminar students, that's 200 packets and 400 passes each week. No matter what changes have occurred or additional work we have been given, we as Torrance Unified School teachers continue to work hard to help students succeed. And it is our nature because we are all passionate about what we do. So isn't it time we see a change that is equal to the value and worth of your Torrance teacher? They say when you treat employees like they make a difference, they will.
Mr. Barrowman, am I saying it correctly? No, Mrs. Telmonte's husband, followed by Sarah Duenes.
I'd like to start off with a big thank you. My daughter plays softball, my son plays baseball, and at first when I got onto this whole Hamilton thing, it was just about baseball and softball, where they're going to play. But as I got more involved and I kind of started more information, it honestly became somewhat more of a discriminatory thing when you look at the percentage of students who are low socioeconomic, which was in the orange band, that live in North Torrance, a lot more than the rest of the district. The reason I'm saying thank you is because when I went to, before the public hearing meeting, I was having my doubts. Does the community really care? It was just us being a nuisance to you, and it just became towards, the softball kids or the baseball people that look like Dodger fans at different meetings. It's all starting to become disheartening. And then then we did our door hanging, and we went to every door in North Torrance, dropped little flyers. And I was like, are they going to come? Are they going to come? January 9th, they came. We had over 200 people there. We had over 35 speakers using up their 3 minutes. We were there till about 9 o'clock that night, and they were not happy at all. They were very upset that the Torrance Unified School District did not tell them about the Hamilton cell. They were very happy to, our little Save the Field, Save Hamilton, let them know, because now they have a voice. As a result of this, we're going to organize, and we're going to create our own little 501c3 called North Torrance Neighborhood Alliance. This would have never happened had you not put up Hamilton as a surplus site. So we are going to have a voice. The North Torrance Homeowner Association, this thing is too political for them. They wouldn't put it on their website. So we are going to create a political organization in the sense to be a watchdog for North Torrance. It's about time we're not treated as a stepchild. It's about time we're not seen as an afterthought. We have a lot of needs. and they're very important to us. And as you've heard all the emotion tonight and other nights, this is very important to us. We would like a democratic process. We'd like to understand why Levy wasn't chosen. Why not bring it up? At the Aquatic Center, I passed out to the 7-Eleven committee. Every site, they had a report. I remember going to that meeting over at the city council office. And, they went through, it was very democratic. But for this, it was just like, oh, guess what? Hamilton is surplus. Levy's untouched. I still don't understand. And we're still waiting for a response from the district at some point. Maybe we'll hear something, but we'll see. Thank you for your time.
Sarah, followed by Alan Glasband.
Good evening. Happy New Year. I hope you enjoyed your holidays with your loved ones. The concerned residents of North Torrance mobilized over the holidays to canvass our community and inform our neighbors of the plans to sell Hamilton Adult School. I spent my holiday weekend going door to door in my part of North Torrance. I live in a big part. I'm bordering on 182nd, Hawthorne, Artesia, and Prairie. 14 miles in 2 days, block to block, speaking to anyone who would talk to me. And you know what? A lot of them did. The 7-Eleven committee was never properly advertised to our community. The district did what they do best, the bare minimum. So we did it for you. On a rainy Tuesday night, our community showed up. Many valid concerns were shared with the committee. You have some very angry voters in North Torrance. We have formed a neighborhood alliance. Our plans are to recanvass North Torrance. Going door to door was a wonderful opportunity to connect. What we learned is some will show up to a meeting, but many will vote. If we lose our adult school, you lose your positions. Our alliance group plans to vet and meet with potential school board candidates. We will give them our support and canvass them for them in North Torrance. Our severely neglected community is happy to receive those who will take our best interests to the school board. If you would like more information or to work with us, you can reach us at ntna90504@gmail.com. Thank you.
Al?
Good evening, board members, staff. Thank you guys for doing your jobs. I mean, not sarcastically. I certainly don't want to sit in your guys' chair. I really don't. Like, my wife doesn't even want me to be here. She wants me to be at home putting my kids to bed and telling them stories and correcting my kids' homework and helping him with his homework. But I've been here since August. I thought, we can just go tell the Torrance Unified School Board that North Torrance doesn't want them to sell that adult school site because little kids play baseball and softball and people take classes there, and they'll just take it off the agenda. Man, fairy tales. I thought the Vikings were going to win yesterday too. So, man, I grew up in Minnesota, and no matter how many times you see your team get beat down, you keep coming back and watching anyways. So hopefully you guys aren't going to be the Philadelphia Eagles on our North Torrance selves, but we'll see. Man, I've heard some really great things from the teachers. I mean, it's just sad that we're all saying the same thing and you're hearing us, but you have to listen to us, not just hear us. Like, you have to actually hear what we're saying and synthesize it into your mind and actually give it back to us in a way that we feel like you heard us, not just like that you heard us in our 2 minutes and 30 seconds and now go sit down, or we'll call the Torrance police because you're breaking a misdemeanor law by messing up our meeting or something. Please, actually listen to the community. It's not just me and Ms. Talamantes and her husband and the other people who have been coming here since August. It's the whole freaking community of Torrance, in case you didn't notice. And the teachers talk to all the kids, and guess what they're going to tell their kids? They're going to tell them, go back and find some new people to run our school district. All right? 3 of you guys are up for election. 1 of them is not able to be here tonight for some reason. But all of you guys should come listen to the community. Dr. So had to listen to it for 2.5 hours. It was a hot seat. And some other people on the committee, I talked to one of the committee members. He felt frustrated. They don't know. They didn't know till we put those 5,000 door hangers at our own expense. I bought like 300 signs already. They're all over Torrance, like Save Hamilton Adult School. They're not cheap. I'm paying for it out of my pocket. It's something that matters to a lot of people. And childhood obesity has been brought up in the last 15 or 20 years, and you guys are like going to get rid of some space that actually helps fight that while you guys are cutting PE classes. Like, my kid has one PE class a week, and you guys are going to get rid of like a site that's doing it for you. You don't even have to pay us. We volunteer. We like make the space, and the kids come and play. It's free. Like, you guys are going to get rid of free resources. So, thanks for letting me talk again.
Okay, we're moving on to the discussion action items portion of our agenda. And anyone wishing to speak also will need to fill a card out for that. Instruction to the public, speakers wishing to address the board on agenda topics are permitted 3 minutes per topic. Total time granted for public input shall be limited to 30 minutes per topic. The board policies require that the public presentation to the board comply with certain procedures, including items 2 through 4 listed in oral communications. Approval, 10.2, approval of the proposed board policy update. Dr.
You need a motion? And a second.
Yes.
Second, or whatever.
In favor?
Thank you, Mr. President. This change puts this policy in line with the policy the board had changed in December, another policy. So now both of those policies will be in line, in other words, saying exactly the same thing. Thank you.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. 10.3, appointment of the Parent Advisory Committee as required by Education Code. It's Dr. Stowe? I need a motion?
So moved.
Second? Dr. Crump, yeah, I'm sorry. Got a lot going on.
Thank you, Mr. Wormers. Each year, we approve parents to serve on the LCAP Advisory Committee, ensuring that our unduplicated population, low-income English learners and foster youth, are represented, as well as representatives for all students, which includes our Torrance Council of PTA president.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, 10.4, adopt resolution AS-07-17/18. Resolution of the Board of Education of the Torrance Unified School District authorizing the execution and delivery of a ground lease, a lease agreement, a trust agreement, a certificate purchase agreement, and a continuing disclosure certificate with respect to the execution and delivery of Torrance Unified School District certificates of participation, 2018 financing. Authorizing the execution and delivery of such certificates, evidence and principal in an aggregate amount not to exceed $12 million, authorizing the distribution of an official statement in connection therewith, and authorizing the execution, if of necessary, documents and certificates of related actions. That was written by an attorney.
Yes.
You need a motion. I like the motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second on that, please? Second. Okay.
If there are any questions, we have our folks there in the front row.
That costs a lot of money? Sorry, I got my own business. I pay for an attorney, so I know. Mrs. Reagan.
Yeah, can we get that deciphered a little bit in layman's terms so people have an idea what that means?
Good evening. My name is Don Field. I'm with Orr, Carrington, and Sutcliffe. We're serving as special counsel to the district in connection with lease financing. So before you tonight is approval of a lease financing. The lease financing is a method in which the district can obtain money to fund projects, and these lease financings are sold to the public through certificates of participations. In other words, the lease obligation is broken up into smaller pieces so investors could buy different portions of it. Instead of a bond, they're called certificates. In order to enter into the lease financing, the district will lease properties to its financing corporation and then lease that property back. The lease back creates a obligation for the district to pay lease payments, and those are the payments that are certificated and sold to the investors, and also raise the funds to fund your projects.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I don't know if that was a whole lot clearer, but thank you. Okay, we have a motion before us. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we have now reached the consent portion of our agenda. Does anybody want to pull something from a consent item?
I will make a motion to approve general functions consent items number 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18.
Do I have a second? No, I'm letting Emily, she stuck it out. That's enough for me for right now. Okay, all in favor of Don's motion? Aye. All right, we have now to the board calendar, 19.1. You can look up things we have scheduled there. Revision to Administration Regulation AR 1330 is 19.2. Is that anything we have to make a motion or anything on?
No.
I didn't think so.
Administrative regulations are not approved by the board.
It's just a change, okay. And Williams reporting requirements, you can look up our Williams reporting requirements there. Comments from the board. Let's start with Mr. Steffen. You're fine, Mrs. Reagans?
I did have a couple of things I wanted to highlight in the consent portion. There were some resolutions that I just wanted to point out to folks. One is calling for full and fair funding of California public schools, which is part of the reason I asked the question about aspiring to 07, 08 levels. No, that's not where we should be. So we have that resolution on our agenda, a resolution proclaiming January 30th as Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution, and a resolution proclaiming February 2018 as African American History Month, and a resolution proclaiming February 5th through the 9th as School Counseling Week. So thank your school counselors for all they're doing with their students. And I have a few anniversary increments of classified employees that have reached anniversaries. That includes Roberta Dimley, Deidre Lopalato, and Paige Miyashiro for 15 years. All three of those are 15 years. And then for 20 years of accredited service, I have David Domsky, Lydia Elliott, and Arnoldo Martinez. Thank you for your service to our students and our schools. That's it.
Mr. Lee, any comments?
Good.
Okay, I want to bring the board up to date on SoCal Rock. This could take a few moments. SoCal Rock has two at-large members, and at-large members are appointed by the SoCal Rock board, and they're not accountable to anyone. They're not accountable back to a school board, nor are they accountable to voters. So I've begun the process of trying to get those positions, one, if possible, eliminated, because they don't do anything but dilute our vote, or two, get some verbiage in the joint powers agreement that allow us to remove them with just a unanimous vote, or a majority vote, not a unanimous, but a majority vote, from the SoCal Rock board. If my board doesn't want me to proceed with this, I need some direction accordingly. Otherwise, I'm going to continue to beat on this one. I don't know my success rate, but I certainly stirred up everyone at the SoCal Rock board meeting in the month of early January, and then again just recently. So everyone walked out of the room mad at me. So I don't know if that's success or not, but
That's what we wanted you to do.
that's what I'm doing. I'm doing it very well, frankly.
Is that kind of scenario in their bylaws of some sort?
It's supposedly, I've yet to see the bylaws. The joint powers agreement does not address it at all. And I spoke with Spence before, our attorney, before we came here, and he agrees with me that it should be part of the joint powers agreement. And we're about to crack open the joint powers agreement anyhow to make a change in some pricing. So we should rewrite the things we want to change. If we're going to open it up and address it, we should open up and address all the things we want to change. And I'd like to see the ability to remove, first off, I'd like to see the at-large members go away, but I don't think we'll get the votes on that. But I'd like to see the ability to remove the at-large members actually be part of the JPA and not part of some obscure bylaws that I'm not aware of. So I'm going to push, like I said, I had to write a letter of apology to one of the...
The at-large members would be chosen by the JPA, or?
They're chosen by the SoCal Rock board.
You mean part of the JPA?
Yeah, they're actually mentioned, it's been for 10 years now, there've been 2 at-large members, but my issue is there's no accountability. If I get off the rails, you guys could tell me I'm no longer the rep. If I get far enough off the rails, the voters will tell me I'm no longer on the school board, so I can't participate with that. The at-large members have no accountability.
Do
And
they have a term limit or a
yeah,
term?
they've got a 4-year term limit, but they get reappointed, because it's just convenient. It's a convenience thing, and this board is very, very used to doing things that's convenient, and I'm not allowing them to do that. Trust me, I've really stirred up. Like I said, I had to write a letter of apology to one of the board members. She didn't understand what I was saying, so I had to apologize to her. But if you guys are okay with me continuing to poke at this, I'm going to do so. But I wanted to go back to them on my next meeting and say, I spoke to my board, I spoke to my superintendent, and I'm good to go. I'm going to continue to beat on this.
Staff?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Short and sweet.
Okay.
All right.
Mrs. Reagan?
I just wanted to, we could talk offline about some of the genesis for when that did come about and what the sort of intentions were at the time. I actually don't know how they did officially build it in, but there is some documentation.
I'm sure there is, and I continue, Ms. Lucky continued to educate me in the history of SoCal Rock, and I could care less, that's not completely valid. It's fascinating, but it really doesn't continue our efforts to look forward. And I'm continuing our efforts to look forward. How we got where we're at is interesting, but I want to look forward, not backwards. So in that position alone, I've created quite the stir with Ms. Lucky. She's very, very unhappy with me.
And the importance to you of eliminating those positions is that, as you said, it dilutes your vote.
Right. The only voters that should have a vote on the table are those districts that actually are part of the JPA. Okay? Inglewood, Manhattan Beach, Redondo Beach, El Segundo, Torrance, Palos Verdes. I think I got them all. Yeah, I got them all. Those are the ones that should have a vote. Everyone else, anyone else in the room is welcome to speak or participate or help or whatever. I don't care what role we call them, but they shouldn't have a vote. Because here's my problem. If myself and the guy from Redondo Beach decide that we want to turn SoCal Rock into a film school, all we got to do is appoint these 2 at-large members, and now we have 4 votes. And they have no accountability. They're on their seat for 4 years until they finally go far enough sideways that the board may or may not vote them out. And right now, for the record, we have the 2 best at-large members there are. Alice Grisby knows more than anyone else I've met. Ida Vanderpoort is very, very talented, very capable. But next time around, we may not. We may have a whack job like me that we don't want an at-large member. So
I love you on the JPA, though.
apparently, as long as you guys are okay with the fact I'm stirring this. Now, here's the rub to this. If it's 2/3 of the JPA votes for the new agreement, our voice falls to the wayside. 2/3 will carry it over. But I got a couple of voices here that Redondo Beach and El Segundo are talking to me and stuff like that, so. The only thing that's been factual in this, Mrs. Reagan, is you and Dr. Mann said this was going to be frustrating. That wasn't a big enough word. That just wasn't a big enough word, so.
Well, then, I guess it just depends on how much of your political will you're willing to spend on this and how important it is to you.
I'm going to be at the meeting for 2 hours regardless, so I might as well make it worth my while.
Right, because
There's no one in that room votes for me, so I could care less. I'm not out there to make friends.
Well, and in fact, if you're in the same position as I was on that board, hardly anybody in the room votes with you.
Yeah, well, I'm beginning to see some of that. Although there's been some turnover. Dr. Watkins is gone, and the new lady from El Segundo is interested in talking, and the guy from Redondo Beach. They've got a lot of things they need to answer for. So, but if everybody's okay with it, I'm going to continue to pound on it.
Yeah, I mean, they need to be accountable to something. I don't know what it is, but just something.
Well, that's where I wanted to report back so I can actually go back to the next SoCal Rock board meeting and go, okay, I talked to my board and they have no problem with the direction I'm leading this on this. Because that was part of Ms. Lucky's argument repeatedly. You're welcome to resign out of, 18 months. You give notice, 18 months, you guys can pull out of SoCal Rock. Like, I have no desire to do that. Apparently, their opinion is only Torrance is the one who's got this problem, and I don't believe that's the case. I actually believe Redondo Beach and El Segundo might have the same kind of concerns.
We're also the one that gives them the most money, so.
That's another thing they said repeatedly. It's a rounding error in Torrance's budget. It's only $900,000. And my quote was, Bill Gates would turn around and pick up $900,000 on a sidewalk, so don't start. Needless to say, I don't get along with him real well, but it makes for entertaining afternoons. Anyhow, that's my report for the
Good, I'll make a
comments.
motion. Oh, wait a minute, we got adjournment.
We got adjournment to a new meeting, but also an adjournment in memoriam of retired teacher Carol Roscoe, retired cafeteria worker May Asato, former board member Stanley Dunn, and North High School student Christian Kitchen. So do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
All in favor?
Oh, just real quick, Stan Dunn's funeral is next, is it Saturday or Sunday? Now, it's the 28th. I know, it's the 28th at American Martyrs Church, so if somebody calls me, I'll find it for them if they want the information. It was also in the Daily Breeze obit.
Okay.
Now you have to open the other.
Make a motion to call the order.
No, motion.
A motion to concur with the motion to approve the resolution AS-08-17/18.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I need a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.